Welcome to Alert Tales, where we dive deep into the most gripping stories of real-life experiences. If you love tales that evoke emotion, spark conversation, and connect us all, you're in the right place. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join our community for more captivating stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat.
My wife is insane, and it made us $185,000. So I posted earlier about how much I love my wife, and I truly cannot emphasize that enough. My wife is such an amazing person, and she has had to overcome so much crazy stuff in her life. The most heartbreaking thing anyone has ever said to me was when she once told me, "You are the only man in my life I've ever felt safe with." Anyway, when my wife and I first met, we fell in love so fast it was scary. But only 3 months after meeting, she came to me with an insane proposal. We had been discussing moving in together, and rather than renting a place, she asked me to buy a house with her. I was 23, just starting my career. I wasn't even thinking about buying a house, but she was so passionate about it. She had apparently been looking constantly at the market, and she found this foreclosed starter home, but couldn't quite afford it on her own. We had literally been together 3 months, and in most contexts, this just would have been a terrible and insane thing to do. But I was so in love with her, and she explained what a good investment it was, so convincingly that I agreed. I put down $8,000, she put down $12,000, and we bought this place for $200,000 together. We got married 9 months after buying it, had our first kid 12 months after that. Not only was this place our first home, we had many happy memories there, but we used it as a rental after getting a slightly bigger home, and it pretty much was what enabled us to afford childcare comfortably. We just sold it for $385,000, $185,000 more than what we paid for it. It is entirely because of my wife that we did this. She is just so freaking awesome, it's wild. I became a dad with only 4 hours notice, positive. 6 years ago, things were different. Primarily, I was a heavy smoker and I was not a dad. That all changed overnight. First, my wife and I had tried unsuccessfully for about 17 years to have children. We tried in utero, IVF, we signed up with an adoption agency that shut down a month later. I had pretty much given up hope of becoming a dad and made my peace with it. Instead, I picked up hobbies, lots of hobbies. My wife, on the other hand, had a harder time dealing with it. Little things would trigger her. Mental leaps from something seemingly innocuous would remind her of our barren state, and she would cry, just cry for seemingly no reason. But how could you explain that the reason you were crying is because you saw a tree that reminded you of a tree that you used to climb as a child, which is still there, waiting to be climbed by other people's children, but not ours because we will never have children? I'm crying because I saw that tree. After one last unsuccessful stab at IVF, we signed up with another adoption agency. They told us that we could probably expect to wait 2 years or more for a child, and what would probably happen is that we would be paired with an expectant mother, help her through her pregnancy, and then adopt the child after he or she was born, provided the bio mom still wanted to go through with it. We signed up at the end of December. In February, less than 2 months later, they called and said, "We have a little girl, but you have to get her right now." She was already 4 days old. I won't go into the story of the bio parents. That's not my story to tell, but what it boiled down to was this. I had 4 hours to get to the hospital and bring home my new daughter. Along the way, I was calling people asking for things like a carriage or a bassinet or a stroller or a car seat. I had nothing. All I had was that feeling you get when you're in the middle of a life-altering event and you know it. Everything changes right now, ready or not. Speaking of which, I don't know, even now 6 years later, if I was ready to be a dad. I had 17 years to think about it, but was I ready? Is anybody ready? Did it even matter? No amount of mental preparation can totally prepare you for that feeling when you first hold that baby in your arms. That overwhelming rush of emotion, that cascade of chemicals suddenly washing through your brain, bringing love, panic, joy, anxiety, shock, and terror in undulating waves. Above all else though, at that moment was the love. Love for the baby, love for my wife. She was crying again, but these tears, they were different. If I looked at them under a microscope, I would be able to see the difference, but I didn't need to. These were my tears too. I had smoked a cigarette that morning. I could still smell it on my jacket. I knew in that moment I was quitting. I had tried to quit smoking longer than I tried to have a child, but always I failed. This time was different. It didn't matter so much to me when it was my own health on the line, but when it's her health. I had yet to go through the withdrawal symptoms that always broke me in the past, but I knew this time I was quitting. I haven't had a puff since. Our family was waiting for us when we got home. They brought things we needed, baby-raising tools and toys. They celebrated with us. That first night, when we finally had her at home, she was asleep in a bassinet on the floor by the couch. I was lying on the couch with one arm hanging over, her little hand was wrapped around my pinky. She was so small, it seemed it was impossible that she could be real. After all these years, to have this little baby here suddenly when we had waited so long, that she should be here, be real, be alive. Her tiny heart was about the size of a walnut. I prayed that it knew what to do, that it would keep beating, never stop, because I wouldn't know what to do to make it go again. And I realized then that the flip side of love is horror. Crazy, morbid thoughts invaded my brain in those early hours of fatherhood. When my family and friends were gone and I was alone with my daughter, my mind turned on me. I replayed in my mind the worst possible scenarios. How would I react if this happened, or that, or, dear Lord, I won't get descriptive here. I can't. But I knew that my life was tied to hers now, that I would do anything to protect her, that I can't let any of the bad scenarios happen because I love her. Capital letters, love her, fatherly love. This was so new, love for sure, but different somehow because I had known love. Love for my family, love for my wife, but it was like I thought I knew apples. I've been eating Red Delicious and Granny Smith all my life. I know apples. And then someone hands me a Macintosh. In the coming weeks and months I would realize something else too, that our childlessness was just as damaging for me as it was for my wife, but where she would simply burst into tears, I would go numb or do something else, anything else, start a new hobby. I convinced myself that I was fine. I'd accepted the fact that I would never be a dad. I didn't notice the wounds until my daughter was there to fix them. It was startling to realize how completely I had fooled myself. She saved me from a doom I didn't know was coming and healed a pain so deep and omnipresent that I didn't even know it was there until it was gone. I'm writing this now, 6 years from when it happened. Those emotions I was experiencing that day are still here, still as powerful as that day, but not as overwhelming. It's simply not new anymore. So I don't lie awake at night worrying about the worst things that might happen. I don't burst into tears when I realize that the 17-year nightmare is over. Those feelings are there still, but I've controlled them. Those scars are still there, unseen, scars on my heart and on my mind, to remind me even as things settle into routine that I can never take her for granted. I love my adopted daughter, and I love my wife for never giving up on having children, even after I did. I have loved watching her grow, watching her learn, hearing her laugh, hearing her sing. She has given me a reason to hope for old age so I can witness as much of her life as I can and be there for her when she needs me.